Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This is one of my favorite people in all of Ponchatoula. I don't get to see him as often as I'd like because he's really busy, because he's been so incredibly successful. But every time I see Lucas Watkins, we hit off like we never missed a beat. He and I came up together through Ponchatoula High School, and he's been incredibly successful. He's the founder and president of ELOS, a local environmental and consulting company that does a ton of great work in our area and really all over the country as far as New York. And I'm sure he'll tell us a little bit about that. He's married to one of the preeminent business attorneys in the area, Jennifer Lee, my high school and law school, classmate, schoolmate. And they've got a wonderful family, great kid. Just wonderful folks. He's a heck of a fun guy to share at a campsite, whether you're around a campfire or down the river on the water. Always fun to have a friend with a boat. So with no further ado, I'll welcome my buddy Lucas Watkins to the program. Lucas, thank you for joining us, man. How you doing today?
Doing great, Parker. Thanks for having me. It's quite an honor to be invited. So you have quite a list on your roster of previous guests of festival royalty and politics.
Yeah, no, you're right. I've been blessed. Pretty much everybody I interview is more important than I am, and you're proof of that. So it's been neat. We've had multiple judges and dignitaries, like you mentioned, kings and queens, if you will. And of course, you're a titan of industry, so I get to hear about that. But before we get into your incredibly successful career as a businessman, as a scientist, all the things you do, why don't we just kind of start with you telling us a little bit about yourself and who you are?
Sure, Parker. I'm from Ponchatoula. Family's from Ponchatoula. My mother was a parent, so I'm the parent family. If you're from Ponchatoula, you bound to know a couple.
About a third of the town is parents. I mean, we don't have phone books anymore, but when we did, all you have to do is open it and you'd see how big that family is.
That's right. It made dating difficult. Grew up on the east side of town, Thibodeau Road. My father, Larry Watkins, cabinet man. My mother, social worker. Both still doing well. Retired. Living in town now next to the Memorial Park, where my grandparents' property was. They built a home there.
Yeah, beautiful home they built. Well, before we move on, let me ask you about your parents, because they're well liked. And, I married a social worker, so I get to see what it's like to be married to a social worker, but I don't know anything about what it's like to be raised by a social worker. So tell us about your mom and dad and what life was like growing up in their house.
It was great. Now, that social worker part, they like to have talks, listen about it. Right. But that's great. It's part of it, having that background. Her raised me that way, and I try to do that now with my son. And my father, he was self-employed, and if I was big enough to do anything, I was running a broom, sweeping up sawdust in his cabinet shop. And being around that made me hands-on, and he taught me things, and we've taken that from cabinets to anything we touch. We got to work on it now, thanks to him.
Yeah, it sounds like a neat balance. I mean, you've got, your mom helping to nurture you and raise you in a certain way, and your dad teaching you the value of hard work. I know you've grown up to become an entrepreneur, a hardworking one at that. I'm sure that you learned, that from your dad. What are some things that, you would give them credit for in terms of things that you've used to become successful, or lessons you learned, or qualities they passed on?
Well, certainly. We had a good family unit. They were together, raised us right. Education, they pushed that. I always supported that. Got us, my brother and I, through college. But good work ethic was a big part of it. And being punctual. So some basic things that we think they're basic, but you see us lacking more and more.
Well, you and I being employers, we learn it with people that we hire. Things we take for granted that our parents taught us to do are not taught in every house, and are not practiced. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You mentioned your brother. I'm a big fan. And, you know, he's a part of the hip music sensation, the Cricket Farmers, Ponchatoula's, you know, hottest new band with, with speaking of parents, with a very, you know, Brandon Perrin, my son Luke's godfather, and my childhood classmate. So tell us about growing up with your brother. I mean, you know, it seems like I see you two together all the time, whether we're camping out behind Brandon's house or, I mean, you know, y'all seem to get along so well. And
Right.
now that I'm raising two boys and breaking up fights every day and having grown up fighting Bree every day, you know, I know you can't, that sometimes, you know, we don't all start out, you know, as good buds as y'all seem to be. So what was like life like growing up with Wesley, and what was the dynamic like in the Watkins house?
Well, certainly, man. You've got brothers, and you know how that goes growing up. He's 5 years my elder.
Right.
But we're very close. He's taught me a lot. You know, we have a lot of the same interests. We've both rebuilt old cars from the ground up. We still do a lot of mechanical stuff. We both play guitar. And a lot of those things are from his tutelage of him teaching me, just hanging around. So
yeah,
it's been great.
Yeah, great guy. Well, you mentioned your parents, you know, stressing education and getting both you and your brother through college. Before we get into the college years and we hear about, you know, how you basically got the education and training that you would need to become a wetlands scientist and business owner and all the things you've done, let's talk about those early years. You know, what do you remember about the Ponchatoula school system, maybe specific teachers, coaches, you know, what were your Ponchatoula educational days like?
Well, I have to think back there, Parker. It's been a while, but you're right. I'm a product of the Ponchatoula public school system from K through 12. It was, I had nothing to compare it to, but it must have worked. It suited me.
Right.
I tell you, a lot of them. I mean, I had old Virgil Allen. He was, you know, principal there.
Yeah, well, you and I together, that we were there some of the last of the Mohicans of his principal days, right before he elevated to superintendent.
That's right. I still see him. He always has great words, kind words. A great guy there.
Yeah, he was a great principal, and he's still a great community leader. Speaking of those good old days, your classmate Jeremy Pelshay's chimed in here to give your class of '96 some props.
That's right. That's right.
Y'all did have a heck of a class, a lot of good guys. Maybe not up to par with the old class of '95, Jeremy, but y'all were close.
I ran into another classmate today I haven't seen in probably 20 years old, Denny Hill. I don't know.
Oh yeah, Denny's great, man. We played baseball together. That's a great family. His cousin Ryan was on the show about a year ago, and yeah, Denny's dad was my baseball coach when I was a kid. Yeah, where'd you see him?
Boat parks.
Okay, cool. Hey, I appreciate you drinking your coffee out of that Parker Layrisson mug there. You know, I get a little free advertising out of it. Right. We've got other guys from that era, your class. Matt Cox giving the thumbs up here. Hey, Matt, good to hear from you. Speaking of those Little League days, you and I, of course, played together. And, man, I can still think of your mom volunteering for the league and serving, you know, just so, in so many ways. What a great family the Cox family is. But, Matt, good to see you, man. Ben Richardson, our buddy, has chimed in here. And he says that you, Luke, taught him the proper way to hold a fish for a photo op to make the fish look 3 times bigger. You got any explaining to do there? Did you put one over on young Richardson there? What's the story there?
I don't recall a specific thing. That might be a North Carolina excursion from way back when.
Oh yeah. You can't trust those Richardson boys, man. I'm here to tell you. I mentioned God. I think Ben got jealous because I mentioned Brandon Perrin as a godfather, and Ben is the godfather to my other son, my younger boy. So Benny's a good godfather too. And of course, he and Brandon work together, so those two have a nice little friendly rivalry going at work. Well, you know, we're talking about the good old days. Virgil Allen is principal of PHS, and you know the good lessons you learn. You know, it sounds like you felt well prepared for college by your mom and dad in the home, and Mr. Allen and the many great educators that you got in the Ponchatoula system.
I
Tell us about that chapter in life.
Well, and back to the high school, like Carol Dahmer was another great.
Oh yeah, great teacher.
But they had, I guess they still do, the advanced classes. I felt like those were situated with other students and similar skill sets, their challenges, and I felt very prepared when I went on to college.
Yeah, I agree with you. Carol Dahmer, who you mentioned, was a phenomenal math teacher. And you get to take her, algebra 1, and then you go see her daughter-in-law, down the hall for maybe algebra 2 or some trigonometry or whatnot. But a lot of really strong teachers there, and I think that tradition hopefully is being held up. I mean, you and I, our kids are young, right? So we haven't yet made it back through the ranks to see whether it still holds up. But I certainly hear great things coming out of PHS these days, and a lot of our old classmates are there. I mean, your classmate. Now Drake, then House, is there. Jennifer, Brandy Willie, now Daniels is there. I mean, a lot of great educators, as well as a few that were actually teaching when we were there. So that's kind of cool. So when you went to college, I know you would ultimately end up studying things like forestry and, wetlands and, ecology and science stuff. Did you go in with the plan to major in that? Did it take you a while to find a path? What was your experience like?
I had an idea it's going to be some natural resource related field. I started at Southeastern. They did not have a forestry program, but I started all my prerequisites there. And somewhere along the way, I picked LSU and shifted over there in their forestry program, forest management.
Okay.
And for those that don't know, because a lot of people don't unless they grew up where there's a lot of timber and landowners, it's tree farming essentially. We're managing property to maximize yield of timber or wildlife, whatever the goals may be. That's what a forester does. So we assess property and come up with goals for that. So that's what my forestry degree is in. And then from there, I graduated LSU in 2000 and wasn't quite ready to work. So I pursued an MBA for a year or so at Southeastern. And our buddy Snapper Crochet was across the parking lot in the biology building.
Yeah, what a great guy.
Working for a professor named Gary Schaefer. Their wetlands guru. So I started hanging around with them and said, man, I'm not going to fool with this MBA. So I swapped over, got into the biology master's program under Gary Schaefer. Studied wetland ecology. A lot of that work was here in our local.
Yeah, Professor Schaefer is, he's the man in that field, right? And he's a great guy. He and his wife Demetra are great. They have these little triplets. They're just a wonderful family. But from what I understand, he's really a widely respected leader in that field. Is that right?
Absolutely, brilliant guy.
Yeah.
So for me, I grew up on the river, and that allowed me. A lot of that work was in Manchac. I worked at Turtle Cove. Graduate school, taking school groups out, cutting grass, fixing whatever they needed to fix. They saw I was kind of handy, so they utilized that. That's okay. So I finished with my master's there, and I had to go to work. So that put me into the forestry business there for a while.
So did you go to work in that straight out of grad school, or what was the path?
I believe that's what I did. I had a buddy that I went to LSU with that was in the forestry business, and if I recall, we kind of worked together. And then once I got out of graduate school, kind of went full time. He and I were partners.
Okay.
On up until now, it's largely in the Florida parishes, and I forget how many tens of thousands of acres we were managing for clients, but a lot of that was devastated by Katrina, and so I need to do something, figure something else out.
When your forests get whacked by a hurricane, that can dampen your prospects, I'm sure.
There wasn't much managing to do for a while. Let it grow back. But what I saw was a need. People were moving to the North Shore, building subdivisions, needing permits for wetlands. So I said, well, let me figure out this process.
Right.
So I figured it out, taught myself what these agencies required, started processing permitting. And for these developments, there was a need, we did that. And from there, I kind of built it off of that.
So, and that of course is part of what your company does. When does Elos, originate? When's the company come about, and did you go into business for yourself?
I believe it was 2006 is when we started, Parker.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a partner in Elos, Jay Prater.
Right. You and Jay were partners and co-founders. Is that right? Y'all both did it together from the start?
Correct. That's right. And initially, we had another partner. It was an engineering firm from New Orleans, a 75-year-old firm,
Okay.
100 people or so. Jay had started working for those guys. He was going to leave, and he and I were going to start something, and we created what was Krebs Style Environmental at the time. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
It was a great stepping stone for us as young guys getting started, being tied to this established 75-year-old firm. And they were,
and folks, for those of you that don't know Jay, he's a great guy, a real fun guy. He's from my hometown of Killian. He's not a big city boy like Lucas from the high-rise east side of Ponchatoula. We're from the little old village of Killian, but he served out there on the city council and whatnot. So great guy. So how did the two of y'all meet, and how did that partnership kind of come together?
We actually met at Southeastern. He was the other knucklehead wearing white shirt boots around on campus. So somehow we crossed paths and met, and then from there we just became friends. And then as careers took off, we stayed in contact and created a partnership, and it's been a great friendship as well. Still is.
Yeah, very cool. Well, speaking of great friendships, our buddy Kevin and Karen Rayford have chimed in here with a comment. They say, hello, Lucas, and congratulations on all your success. Kevin gave a great interview here on this show. Everybody loves him. And, of course, Karen's his much better half, so they love her too, as well as all those boys they're out there raising. So Thank y'all for tuning in. We sure appreciate it. Folks, we're here with Lucas Watkins. We're talking about basically the origins of his very successful company, Elos, back in the Krebs LaSalle environmental days, and forming a partnership with his partner, Jay. When y'all went into the business early on, did you feel like you were fully capitalized, thinly capitalized? Was there just piles of money in the bank and you knew payroll was going to be easy? Or was it kind of like Parker Layrisson Law Firm, where it was a little bit of a wing and a prayer and red beans, instead of steak for a while until you could get on your feet? What was that whole starting a business, entrepreneurial, start like?
Well, I think we're still on the red beans mostly. Part of our secret, I guess. But we've started out. We put up $5,000 or $10,000 each to cover the first few payrolls, and went from there.
Yeah.
And to this day, we've grown it organically. We've never borrowed. Shouldn't say never, but we've never really worked in the negative. We've always in the positive there and function.
Kind of like the old Gordon Burgess model of parish government: pay as you go. You haven't dug deep with a ton of loans, and it served you well. You've grown a lot. Tell us about the company now. I mean, how big are you? Where are you? I mentioned earlier, I know your reach extends as far up north as New York, because my buddy Eric Poche, who works for you, was assigned to New York for a while. But tell us about what y'all do now and where you do it, and how you've grown from that small two guys with $5,000 a piece, humble beginning.
Yeah. So back to the Krebs LaSalle days, I'd say about 8 years ago, they sold out to a large engineering firm, and Jay and I split off from them, and it's just he and I. And we moved into a rent house I had in hand, and we were 4 people. Didn't know what we were going to do, but make a go of it till we see what happens. Anyway, it wasn't long. We had more people. We built out that house. I had another house next to it. We drug some wires through the trees for internet, filled up that house. So we're kind of running off the grid and off Airport Road. No sign by the street. People didn't know where we were, and it worked out well. Now we bought.
Yeah, as I recall, that house was kind of back in the woods, right? I mean, so it wasn't like you were on the side of the interstate with a sign up and lots of visibility.
No, that's right. We don't have a lot of walk-in clients even there. So now we moved to Hammond. Our main office is in downtown Hammond. Very nice setting, landscape. The employees enjoy. Work-wise, we majority of our work's in South Louisiana, in the boot, South Louisiana. Probably 80% of our work. However, we've got some guys and gals in New York City. They've been there for a couple of years, off and on. Hopefully we keep that going. A few in Texas, and depends on when the projects, where they are and what happens. So the core of our work was built on regulatory work, the things needed to develop a raw piece of land. You want to build a subdivision, a road, pipeline, utility line, you have to go see if there's wetlands issues, endangered species issues, cultural resource, archaeological issues. We do all those types of surveys. And then we help facilitate getting that project permitted through whatever the appropriate regulatory agency is. The Corps of Engineers, DNR, DEQ, SHPO, on and on and on.
Right. So what I gather here, there's a ton of red tape with development. So if you got, say, a family like us, the Layrissons, my daddy had a cattle farm in La Ranja for years and years. And let's say instead of handing it down to his boys, like he foolishly did here a couple years ago, let's say he wants to turn that, acreage into a subdivision. There's a lot of ways he could mess up. He could run afoul of the Corps of Engineers or the parish or the state or a lot of other places. It sounds to me like you guys can walk them through that. So whether it's a sophisticated big company like a DSLD or a small farmer like my dad, with a side hustle cattle farm, am I correct here that you could kind of help us navigate the complicated waters of regulations and all the laws that apply and think hoops you got to jump through?
That's exactly right, Parker. And it's a shame that the process has become that cumbersome.
Yeah.
That's just where we are. And so
but you got to do it right. And I mean, look, folks don't know. I mean, I know I served for a decade or so as the attorney for the drainage board. And what I learned in doing that was most people don't even know there is a drainage board, much less where it is. And our parish has multiple drainage boards. And, I'd see folks that work for you there all the time, knowing it well, but you'd help navigate it. And it's good for the local government because we've got a local credible face, somebody we know, like, and trust, who can kind of help be, a liaison of sorts. And then that land developer's got somebody who makes sure y'all do it right. They'll, can kind of guide them and coach them up. What are some common mistakes you see out of people developing property? I would imagine not everybody's smart enough to come in, hire y'all early. So over the years, you've probably been brought in with the goal of cleaning up a mess, and you've probably seen every mistake under the sun. What are some of the most common mistakes that people could and should avoid if they knew better?
Well, a lot of times, but this usually innocent. They don't know the process, and the agencies understand that and are willing to work with them through that. But it's getting the cart up in front of the horse. Typically, let's get the bulldozer out there and go to cleaning the thing up, and then they go to parish, and then they get into the process and figure out, oh, I need to do this and do that, and well, they've already started the land side of the process, and we have to kind of work backwards to get them there. Sometimes it takes a little longer when it happens that way.
Yeah.
But,
and folks may not realize they can get in a little trouble if they push the wrong plant or animal in the wrong direction. Or if you disturb the wrong nest, you can really get in trouble. And you can help folks avoid that. I want to share another comment here. Wayne Ratliff has chimed in. Hey, Wayne, good to see you on here. He says, Lucas, you're good people, and congrats on your success. So, man, Wayne,
I hadn't seen that fella in a long time.
Good folks there, man. We appreciate you tuning in, Wayne. Folks, we're here with Lucas Watkins. We're talking about his company and the permitting process and services they provide. What is it, Lucas, that you like about what you do? I mean, I know as your friend, you've been incredibly successful, but you remain humble. But you and Jay both, y'all hustle. I mean, I see you guys getting at it, working hard to grow your business, to serve your clients well, to serve our community and various government entities well. Clearly you like it, or you'd be off doing something else, because I know you have other interests. What is it you like most about it, on a day-to-day level or an overall level? Just what do you like about your profession?
Well, the services we provide still aligned with what I went to school with, for what I
Mm-hmm.
have interest in. I think it's valuable. It's valuable to us as citizens and users of the resources. Things we do have long-term effects, good or bad, hopefully
Mm-hmm.
good. Uh, I've got the headaches, certainly from an owner standpoint of the management side of things, but yet I still get to be involved with restoration projects or mitigation efforts and things that are
Uh-huh.
just some good. It's not. There's still some good feeling activities going on there.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be a part of.
Well, one of the things I admire about you is you serve your community in multiple ways. As a business owner, you're providing jobs, you're helping people, raising families. I think of like Flynn Daigle, who we grew up with, and I see him and his wife, and they're raising all these kiddos and doing well, and they've got a good job, because of you and Jay and what y'all have created. So there's that private sector element of what you do. And then we talk about the fun stuff, playing guitars, whether it's down the river or, up here, but you also are into community service. And I saw that up close and personal through our mutual service on the Port Commission, where you dedicated a whole lot of time for zero money. And then frankly, that's a very thankless, sometimes controversial job. So tell me, what is it is it because you were raised by a social worker and you just feel the need to contribute to the community, or what got you into community service, and where does that come from, and why do you do it and enjoy it?
Well, I feel thankful for where I'm at in life, Parker, and much like
Mm-hmm.
yourself, we've worked hard, and we've been successful. We had people around us to support us.
Sure.
I feel like if we can get out there and do that wherever we can and have the ability, it helps everybody around you, and it'll come back around full circle.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
I think I can thank you for getting me on the port phone.
We both can thank, our late dear mutual friend, Mark Griggs. Yeah, that's who got me on there. And yeah, and if you blame me, I can tell you it was at least 50% Mark's idea to get you on. So
I believe you're correct. That's right.
but no, it was a good learning experience. I certainly enjoyed serving on the Port Commission, and we had a great group of guys. You, Don Bankston, Mark Griggs, Don Bohm. I mean, ton of more than I can name. Tony Licciardi, Mike Williams, etc. A lot of community leaders that like I say, it's a thankless job, and there's no pay in it, but I appreciate you doing it. I admire that about you. Let's circle back to family. We started this interview talking about family, and particularly your beloved mom and dad, who are kind of community heroes around here. But let's talk about another community hero in your wife. Jennifer Lee is one of the most talented people I've ever met. She was a couple years ahead of me in high school, and then 1 year I think ahead of me in law school. And so I've always been kind of drafting behind her, watching what she does. And she's always been generous. When I got to LSU Law, she may have been the only person I knew in that class ahead of us. Certainly the only Ponchatoula kid there. And she was kind enough to share her valuable time and insight and whatnot. Like you, I think she's gone on to study business, get an MBA. She works for a very respected firm out of the city with local offices, where she's a partner representing big businesses. I know she represents at least one nonprofit that I serve on the board of, and serves us well. So let's talk about your wife and how y'all met and what she's like, because I know, like me, another thing we share in common, we outkicked our coverage, right? So we're blessed in that regard. But tell us about Jennifer and your love story and kind of how that all came to be.
Sure. Now, she and I both grew up on the east side of town. But we knew each other, but we weren't really acquainted growing up. I knew her father well, great guy. He was a bus driver, dirt work guy, farmer. And it wasn't until later in life, after college or so, we crossed paths again. I think it may have been at a Strawberry Festival.
I met my wife at the Strawberry Festival. There's magic in the air, man. That's exciting.
Yes, I reintroduced myself, and
yeah,
kind of went from there.
Cool.
I think we've probably been together 15 years or better now.
Yeah.
Parker.
I won't put you on the spot and ask you your anniversary. I'm not going to get you in trouble in case she
Oh,
watches.
I got that. January 1.
Nice. Good work. Good work. Well, I know you guys are now parents. I mean, how do y'all navigate the busy, because you own this very successful big business where you have a partner in Jay and y'all are running it, but it's growing fast and, kicking butt. You also, as I understand it, have some side hustles, so to speak. I mean, every time I see you, you're picking up some piece of equipment. You might have a mill to do timber with, or a bobcat or a bush hog or whatnot. And, you play with all that stuff and turn much of it into businesses and whatnot. But your wife is a partner in a major law firm. She's got, y'all have investment properties, all this stuff going, and then you're great parents. So how do y'all kind of manage that busy life, and what could we learn from you guys?
Well, a large part is luckily we have parents around.
Right. Yeah.
Family to help with the parenting side of things. We are busy. We don't have typical hours. Luckily, my partner is flexible enough. He understands I have a son. I have to run around and go to things with. And luckily, Jennifer's work is flexible enough as well. So we do a lot of communicating on the phone. Where you at? Who's going to get it? Who's going to be
Right.
where? But a lot of coordination and a lot of good support.
Yeah.
I look at people like our buddy Snapper that's living off and doesn't have that nice.
Yeah, no, you're right. I mean, when he sets off the, places like Washington, D.C., and of course, heck, he's lived all around the world, as far as the Philippines. But you're right. That's got to be tough as a parent, not having, because my kids right now, as we speak, are probably still at my mother-in-law's house where they were all day. My parents watch them. I mean, everybody's close. It feels like Independence is far away, and of course it's not. It's 15, 20 minutes up the road. But yeah, that is a blessing. Speaking of folks from that generation that I just look up to, in addition to your parents and mine, Mr. Paul Kluka has chimed in here. Man, when I was little, runt of a kid running around the ballparks, I mean, he was a fixture at, say, the Dixie, this time of year, Dixie Youth Baseball. You couldn't go to JC Park without seeing Mr. Paul out there. So, Mr. Paul, thank you for watching the show. You're definitely one of my heroes. And Lucas, he says congratulations to you on all your success. Let me ask you this. Tell us, if you wouldn't mind, about the kind of side, I kind of jokingly talked about some of your side hustles and all, but, you mentioned earlier, you and your brothers work on cars, and, tell us about some of the stuff you're into, whether it be a mill or whatnot. I know you do woodwork, your dad's a cabinet guy, so you learn that from Jump Street, but kind of what are you into? What are your interests and toys and whatnot?
Well, it kind of evolves, but yeah, I was big into sawmill stuff for a while, being a forester and woodworker, and we still have sawmills and just more of a hobby now.
Yeah.
Shrimping, still have a shrimp boat, 32-foot boat.
Oh, that's great. When I was a kid, my dad had a shrimp boat. He conned my mom into talk about all the money they'd save on food. I think he said when he finally sold the shrimp boat 10 years later, he calculated the shrimp we ate was like $38 a pound or something. But I remember as a kid, we would love it because, once you'd pull up the nets, it wasn't just the shrimp you were going after in there. There was every kind of sea creature imaginable, from the catfish you'd see all the time on trot lines and whatnot, to prehistoric looking stuff that Daddy couldn't even tell me what it was, even though he was a wildlife agent. So does your boy like the shrimping? Does your wife like the shrimping? What's that like for y'all?
Yeah. Cole certainly loves it. Jennifer's gone a few times. Like I say, to pick through stuff.
Yeah.
She enjoys it. Now Jennifer can get seasick, so
no fun.
Fair weather shrimper. And sailor. One time.
Well, where do you keep your shrimp boat in Man Shack, or where? I mean, where do you? That's a big boat. I assume you're not bringing it up to Tangipahoa.
It either lives in Man Shack or at a friend's marina down in Chalmette, in St. Charles.
Cool.
My shrimping yield picked up a little better when I went where they had shrimp. Lake Barn.
That makes sense. Well, tell me this. You seem to be a guy who has kind of figured this thing out professionally at a young age. do you think that you're, do you see like a different second act in your career? Do you think you stay with just Elos as a main focus in the future? Do you envision early retirement for the Watkins family, or what do you think the future holds when we start looking in the second? Because you don't have the gray in the beard like I do. But I'm only 1 year ahead of you in school, right? So we're at that age where it's time to start thinking maybe about what the second half of the career may have in store for you. Have you given that much thought, or anything you'd share on that front?
I don't know if I have it figured out yet. First off, I'll still just wake up, hit the floor, running.
You're too modest, Lucas.
Make a day of it and keep it going. As far as the company, I will just keep pushing along with that.
Right.
I have some other things I'd like to get going as well, not instead of, but
and what are those? What are some things that interest you besides your company?
I acquired a boat business a few years ago.
Okay. What kind of boat business?
It's a boat design and fabrication business.
Okay. Where's it located? What are y'all making?
It looked like my shrimp boat, that style hull.
Cool.
And larger, up to 50-something foot. Mostly commercial or Carolina sportsman type offshore.
Oh, wow. Very cool.
So once I can get a little more time away from my environmental stuff, I'd like to get that up and running.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. Well, let me ask you this. I want to ask you about your connection to our community, because you mentioned you grew up here, you went to school in Ponchatoula, K through 12. Although you went off to college, you came back here, pretty soon thereafter, and you married a local girl, and you're raising your boy here. But with the success that you and Jennifer have had, professionally, financially, et cetera, I mean, it's no stretch to say y'all could live anywhere in the world. You could live in big cities, you could live in Europe, whatever, but you choose to stay here in Ponchatoula. So, I guess first question is kind of why, and then we'll dig deeper into Ponchatoula. But, why do you choose to stay here? And what is it about Ponchatoula that drew you back here out of school and kept you here through this day?
You make a good point. Good question there. I mean, I've done a lot of traveling. I've been lucky to have that ability, and I enjoy traveling. I have I've got several plans this summer yet. I bring my son places and camps and things. And I used to want to live all over the world, but I've seen a lot, and I've learned to appreciate what we have here and the opportunities I have here. I like waking up here and seeing cypress trees and running past rocks and trout. I enjoy those things. And I enjoy family here, extended family and friends, and having those friends just like yourself that had for lifetimes. And
yeah,
I wouldn't have that if I was just off on my own.
You're right. I mean, we could all go make a new friend tomorrow, but I find that it's harder to feel out the adult friendship, right? It's like, what's the angle here? Is this somebody who wants a job, a contract, a reference, whatever, versus that guy who you kind of knew in the foxhole of 9th grade English class. And you kind of learned his character when, the teacher turned around and was looking for who threw the spitball, and, was he going to rat on you or not? And there's something to be said for the Snapper Poches of the world and these guys you mentioned, who are, lifelong friends. And I get that's pretty cool. Well, since it does seem like you're a Ponchatoula lifer like myself and love this place, and whether you've got, a budget for Beatico or the Bahamas, we're here, we're raising these boys, Cole and Luke and James. What's your outlook like on the future? Because we do now have this next generation of these little kids. And I think it's neat that you're taking Cole around the country, and, you're fishing in places besides Beatico Creek and Manchac and but what do you think about Ponchatoula? Because the city we live in now is pretty different than the one we grew up in the 80s, and I would imagine it's going to change even more so, and maybe even faster in the years to come. So kind of what are your thoughts on Ponchatoula in terms of where we're coming and where you see us going?
I mean, I think our leaders, our parish presidents and council persons and mayors here, they're doing a great job of trying to preserve the quality of life we have, but they have their struggles because everybody else wants to be here too. And I think that's the biggest challenges we're going to have is the things that come along with the developments and the influx of people and the strain it puts on our infrastructure and roads and drainage and all those things.
Yeah.
But I think they have done a good job of maintaining a lot of things we do appreciate and cherish here, certainly in the downtown areas and where they can control it, even in the rural areas.
Yeah. Well, when you're traveling this summer with your son, you know, with your wife, wherever y'all may go, and people ask you about Ponchatoula, you know, should they visit? What should they do? Whatever. What are the first things that may come to mind as you kind of, you know, take on that role as ambassador, you know, wherever you may be? What are the first things that pop in your head when people put you on the spot for Ponchatoula, like I'm doing right now?
They got to come find us and go down the river for a little bit.
Amen to that. Hey, they got to hit P. Rand Point, right?
That's right. That's right. But I give them the same spiel. I mean, we have our own set of great things here to see.
Mm-hmm.
But as you know, we're located in good spots. You can scoot an hour each way and see New Orleans, Baton Rouge, all those things.
Yeah.
We'll be back here.
Now, there's something to be said for a place where you can, like you say, you're 50 miles away from some of the best restaurants in the world, even shorter drive to Tiger Stadium on a Saturday night, you know, and yet, you know, right down the road is, Tangipahoa River, Manchac, Beatico Creek, you name it. I mean, all this great wildlife and whatnot. Well, look, Lucas, I promised I'd get you out of here in time for dinner tonight, so I won't keep you too long. But before we get into closing this thing up, is there anything on your mind, on your heart, anything I haven't asked that maybe you wish I would have, anything you want to talk about at all or share with our viewers and listeners?
I don't have anything offhand, PK.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a nice interaction and exchange.
It's fun. It's a shame that, you and I, this may be the only way we get to catch up in a while. But, one thing I want to say about you, and of course, floor is yours to say whatever you want. But, I've been blessed that several of my friends growing up have become incredibly successful. Had lunch with one of them today, Jeff Leschere, who's been on the show before, now has over 100 employees and 30.
Road guy.
Yeah, I mean, that's another east side of Ponchatoula. Humble beginnings with great parents, just world-class people, but not a ton of wealth and influence. And, he didn't come into it in a silver spoon. Neither did you. But now you guys are running these little empires. And from where I sit, I see you doing it in a way that is, you're empowering your employees, you're serving our community, you're providing a very necessary service because, as you mentioned, this growth's going to happen, but it needs to happen right. We need to protect our environment, the local. And anyway, I really admire that. I mean, it's kind of like not everybody who gets a big hit of success handles it that well. And you have. And not everybody seems to deserve it. And you do. And you don't seem to have changed a bit from that skinny kid I saw, other than maybe, you and I both, our hairlines are a little different than they used to be. But as a person at your core, you seem to be the same good-natured, great guy that I knew in Ponchatoula High School, 25 years ago. So, for that, I applaud you. And I thank you for just kind of staying true to that, because that's kind of the best thing about Ponchatoula, the people, and how, some of us are blessed with a ton of success, some not, but it's a good community where people seem to care about the right things and do right by people. And I really admire the example that you and your wife and your brother and heck, your whole family is kind of putting out there in our community. Like your parents. I love that your parents moved in by the park, because my parents lived there and they're now entering their 80s and the neighborhood's changed a little bit. And some folks, like the Sims, have moved out. And then new people, I passed by this morning and Jerry Miller's out there, he's painting his house. He's always out there swinging a hammer. They're rebuilding this area. The house your parents built is beautiful. And it's so great to see Ponchatoula kind of, revitalized in a way. And, I just want to thank you and applaud you for that. So thank you. But is there anything else before we go you want to say to our folks watching?
Not offhand, Parker, but thank you for having me.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll have a sequel one day.
I'd love that. Well, folks, there you had it. Lucas Watkins. He lived up to the hype. I told you he was one of my favorite people, and now I hope he's one of your favorite people. So, to our viewers, thank you for tuning in to Ponchatoula Live. We'll be back next week, same time and place. Y'all take care.